What I saw was fun, never anything inappropriate. What I saw was work and play at work and fun. Mrs. Cosby was a frequent visitor to the studio. She was there a lot. That's what I saw.
The long-awaited moment that would change everything arrived like a storm, and its impact shattered hearts around the world. Phylicia Rashad, her voice trembling, her eyes heavy with the burden of years of hidden truths, stepped forward and spoke words that no one was prepared to hear, words that would rip apart the carefully crafted illusions of Hollywood. Malcolm's death, she said, was never an accident. It was a conspiracy, a cold and calculated act carried out by people he had once trusted with his life. Her confession spread through Hollywood like wildfire, the kind of revelation that instantly changes the way people see everything they thought they knew. The air seemed to turn cold, the room silent, as if the world itself was holding its breath. And then, like the crack of thunder after a blinding flash of lightning, came the name that made millions gasp in disbelief: Bill Cosby. Felicia claimed he had not acted alone, that hidden in the shadows was another familiar face, someone Malcolm once called family Tempest Bledsoe. Her voice shook, nearly breaking into sobs, as she accused Tempest during a live Zoom call, the tension so heavy it was almost suffocating. She revealed that Malcolm had lived in fear for years, warning her that Tempest was working behind his back, plotting to dismantle everything he had built. And then came the gut punch, a tape from 1997, Malcolm's voice raw with anger as he accused Tempest of sabotaging his career and trying to erase him from Hollywood altogether. Only days after that confrontation, Malcolm was gone, and now the truth Felicia had carried all these years was spilling out for the world to hear. The official story of an untimely accident was beginning to crumble. When news broke that Tempest had been arrested for allegedly playing a major role in Malcolm's death, the world seemed to stop breathing. Fans wept openly, friends collapsed in grief, strangers lit candles on sidewalks and gathered in public vigils. This was no ordinary tragedy. It was betrayal of the most personal and unforgivable kind. Malcolm had not simply lost his life, it had been taken from him, stolen by the very people who had claimed to care for him. The public's heartbreak was laced with a deep, burning anger as they struggled to accept that the ones they thought were his family had been the ones holding the knife. The day had begun like any other quiet evening until Felicia's truth crashed down like a tidal wave. For decades, the world had known Malcolm-Jamal Warner as the warm, charismatic presence from our television screens. The man whose charm and talent had brightened living rooms across the country. To his fans, he was more than an actor, he was family. But what Felicia revealed that day would forever alter that image. Her voice lacked the confident authority audiences had grown accustomed to. Instead, it was colored by grief and a rage that had been building for decades, the kind of rage that comes from holding back a truth so dark it eats away at your soul. With tears in her eyes, she spoke words that silenced everyone watching. Malcolm's death had been planned, and the people behind it were those closest to him. The reactions were immediate and explosive, gasps filling the live stream chat as thousands of comments flooded in. Disbelief, fury, heartbreak. Then, she said his name: Bill Cosby, the man who had played Malcolm's on-screen father, the man who the public believed had been a mentor and protector, someone they thought could never be capable of such cruelty. But Felicia wasn't finished. Her next revelation was even more devastating. There was someone else, another face known to the public, someone who had shared the screen with Malcolm, smiled beside him for cameras, laughed in interviews as if they were the closest of friends. Tempest Bledsoe. The revelation struck like a lightning bolt, leaving fans reeling as they tried to reconcile the cheerful, familiar image of Tempest with the accusations being leveled against her. Felicia wasn't hinting or speaking in riddles, she was pointing directly at Tempest, accusing her of working with Cosby to destroy Malcolm from within. Then came the moment that shook the entire internet. It was you. Felicia's voice cracked as she spoke into the camera during that live Zoom meeting, her words dripping with both pain and anger. It was you who took him from us, you and Cosby, you plotted it, you made it happen. The chat section erupted with crying emojis, angry reactions, and desperate demands for more information. Felicia explained that Malcolm and Tempest's relationship had been poisoned by jealousy and mistrust for years, far from the image of camaraderie the public had always believed. Away from the spotlight, she claimed, Tempest had been working to undermine him, to sabotage his career and isolate him from the industry. And then came the most haunting detail, the 1997 tape, recorded long before the era of social media, back when such a recording could easily remain hidden from the public eye. In that recording, Malcolm's voice trembled with both fury and pain as he confronted Tempest, accusing her of planting false stories about him, turning friends and allies against him, and working relentlessly to make him irrelevant. Their argument escalated until he delivered words that now feel like a chilling prophecy. You're trying to destroy me. You won't stop until I'm gone. Those words, captured decades ago, now echoed through the present like a curse fulfilled. Only months after that recording, Malcolm was dead. At the time, the media had presented his death as a tragic, unforeseeable accident, something no one could have prevented. But Felicia's confession demolished that narrative. What had once been painted as fate now looked like a deliberate, cold-blooded plan. Within hours of her live stream, social media exploded with hashtags like #JusticeForMalcolm, #ArrestTempest, and #CosbyExposed. Old interviews were dug up, photos scrutinized, past red carpet appearances replayed in search of hidden signs. Fans pointed to moments when Malcolm seemed distant around Tempest or when her smile looked forced. Just days later, the world was hit with another shock, the confirmation that Tempest Bledsoe had been arrested. News cameras captured the surreal sight of the beloved actress being led away in handcuffs. The charges, conspiracy, obstruction, and alleged involvement in Malcolm's death, sent further shockwaves through the public. Outside the courthouse, devastated fans gathered, holding signs reading "We want the truth," and Malcolm deserved better. The grief was no longer just for Malcolm's loss. It was for the shattering realization that the very people who should have protected him had been the ones to destroy him. And for Phylicia Rashad, the burden of carrying this truth for decades had taken an unimaginable toll. She admitted that she had stayed silent out of fear, warned repeatedly that speaking out would ruin her career, her reputation, and even put her safety at risk. But now, she said through tears, she could no longer live with the guilt. This wasn't just tragedy, it was betrayal of the cruelest kind, the kind that comes from those you love and trust most. The fallout from Phylicia Rashad's shocking revelation was immediate and relentless, sending ripples of disbelief, anger, and heartbreak across every corner of the entertainment world. The arrest of Tempest Bledsoe, a woman so many had grown up admiring, felt like a surreal nightmare, the kind that leaves you questioning your memories and the people you thought you knew. Reporters swarmed the courthouse, their cameras flashing as she was escorted inside, her once familiar smile replaced by a pale, strained expression. The charges were as chilling as they were damning: conspiracy, obstruction, and alleged involvement in the calculated end of Malcolm's life. As this horrifying reality set in, old wounds for fans and friends alike reopened with a vengeance. People began to revisit decades-old interviews, watching Malcolm's interactions with Tempest more closely, noticing every flicker of discomfort, every guarded glance, every smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. It was as if the public had been given a new lens, one that revealed a darker truth hidden in plain sight all these years. Then, like fuel thrown onto a raging fire, the 1997 tape that Felicia had mentioned surfaced online, leaked by an anonymous source. It spread like wildfire across social media, the sound of Malcolm's trembling voice cutting through the noise with raw, unmistakable emotion. In the recording, he accused Tempest of planting lies, whispering poison into the ears of producers, and actively working to dismantle his reputation. "You've been smiling in my face while cutting me down behind my back," he said, the pain in his voice almost unbearable to hear. And then, the most damning line of all, "I know what you're doing. You're working with him." Even before Felicia's revelation, fans listening to the tape knew exactly who him referred to: Bill Cosby. The internet became a virtual courtroom, with millions of people playing and replaying the recording, analyzing every pause, every sigh, every shift in tone. Malcolm's frustration and anguish poured through the speakers, his words carrying the weight of a man who had seen betrayal up close and knew its sharpest edges. The most haunting part of the tape came in his final warning: "One day, you're going to push me too far, and I won't make it out alive." What had once seemed like the dramatics of an angry moment now felt like a prophecy fulfilled, a desperate plea that went unheard until it was far too late. The shockwaves didn't just ripple through the fan base. They slammed into Malcolm's former co-stars, forcing them into the spotlight. Some refused to comment altogether, their silence only fueling speculation, while others offered carefully worded statements expressing sorrow and the hope that the truth would emerge. But the lack of concrete responses, especially from those closest to both Malcolm and Tempest, only deepened the public's suspicion. Then Felicia appeared again on national television, her exhaustion more evident than ever. Her voice was flat, stripped of the warmth it once held, as she said, "They wanted Malcolm gone. They saw him as a threat, and instead of helping him, they destroyed him. I stayed quiet because I was scared. I'm not scared anymore." Her words painted a devastating picture, one of a man who had tried to raise the alarm in his final days, but was surrounded by people willing to silence him for their own gain. She recounted her last conversation with Malcolm, describing how he told her he felt watched, followed, and manipulated, that people he considered close were leaking personal information to his enemies. And when she named those enemies Cosby and Tempest, it wasn't just a personal betrayal she was unveiling. It was an entire network of deceit, a coordinated campaign to strip Malcolm of his career, his dignity, and eventually his life. Public opinion against Tempest shifted from disbelief to outright fury. The once beloved actress was now a pariah, trending under hashtags like #Holly, #WoodSnake, and #CancelTempest. Yet beyond the social media outrage, there was a pervasive sadness, a heaviness that came with realizing this wasn't tabloid gossip or on-set drama. It was the real and permanent destruction of a man's life and legacy. Old footage of Malcolm doing press tours and answering questions about his castmates resurfaced, and viewers noticed how carefully he chose his words, how his polite smiles didn't quite mask the weight in his eyes. The haunting truth was that the warning signs had been there, hidden in plain sight, but no one had recognized them for what they were. The media frenzy intensified when court documents were leaked, revealing that in the months before his death, Malcolm had taken steps to legally distance himself from contracts connected to Cosby's production companies. According to his lawyer's testimony, he had expressed feeling unsafe and trapped, describing the arrangement as a cage built by people he once called family. Even more damning was the claim that Tempest had acted as an intermediary, relaying Malcolm's private concerns back to Cosby, effectively ensuring he could not escape their control. The revelations were chilling in their precision. This wasn't a random act of violence or a simple falling out between colleagues. It was a calculated campaign to erase him entirely from Hollywood. As the case against Tempest grew, more stories began to emerge from people who had worked with her and Cosby. A former crew member from the Cosby Show set came forward anonymously, claiming that during breaks in filming, the two would have private conversations that left others feeling uneasy. Former friends began speaking out about her two-faced behavior, describing how she could be warm and friendly one moment and cuttingly dismissive the next. For the public, the betrayal cut even deeper because of who Malcolm had been: a man who carried himself with dignity, who avoided public drama, who never lashed out in interviews, and who always tried to keep his personal grievances private. That someone like him could be the target of such cruelty was almost too much to bear. In cities across the nation, candlelight vigils were held in his memory, murals painted in his honor seemed to appear overnight, and fans who had never met him mourned as though they had lost a close friend or family member. But while the public grieved, Tempest sat in a holding cell awaiting trial, her legal team insisting on her innocence. For those watching, however, the court of public opinion had already delivered its verdict. Then came the twist no one had anticipated: whispers of a third conspirator. Felicia hinted at it during her most recent interview before disappearing from the public eye. "This goes deeper than you think," she said softly, her eyes welling with tears. The words sent chills through everyone who heard them. If Cosby and Tempest were not the only ones, then who else had betrayed Malcolm? The possibility that another smiling face from his circle had been involved was almost too horrific to contemplate. The whispers about a third conspirator quickly grew into a deafening chorus, with social media turning into a hive of speculation, investigation, and outrage. Phylicia Rashad's cryptic statement, "They weren't the only ones," lingered like a storm cloud over Hollywood, casting suspicion on every familiar face connected to Malcolm's life. Fans scoured old footage, pausing interviews and red carpet appearances, searching for the tiniest hints of tension or mistrust, desperate to uncover the identity of the hidden betrayer. It didn't take long for leaks to surface. The first came from a former production assistant on The Cosby Show, who claimed to have witnessed tense, almost hostile interactions between Malcolm and an unnamed cast member in the months before his death. According to this source, there were days Malcolm refused to shoot a scene until certain individuals left the set, and while the name wasn't spoken aloud, the implication was chilling. Then came the second leak, a private email exchange between Malcolm and his manager from years earlier. In it, Malcolm described feeling trapped in a cage built by people I once called family, and warned explicitly that 3 people are working together to erase me. The third name was redacted in the leak, but the damage was done. Fans now knew with certainty that this conspiracy was bigger, deeper, and more sinister than they had initially imagined. Soon after, court filings brought an even more disturbing layer to light. A close friend of Malcolm's submitted a sworn statement claiming that just weeks before his death, Malcolm had confessed he believed someone else, someone he had never publicly criticized, was funneling personal and professional information to both Tempest and Cosby. This shadowy figure's betrayal was described as the final piece of the puzzle, making the others untouchable. In their plans to destroy him, the gravity of that claim shook even the most skeptical observers. This wasn't merely backstabbing or petty jealousy. It was the careful, calculated execution of a man's career and life, orchestrated by people who smiled in his presence while tightening the noose around him. As this information spread, Felicia disappeared from the spotlight, reportedly advised to remain silent until the trial concluded. But her absence only intensified the public's thirst for answers. Some speculated she was protecting the identity of the third conspirator, while others feared she too was in danger. Meanwhile, Tempest's case became one of the most closely watched legal battles in Hollywood history. Every time she was escorted from her holding cell to court, the streets outside the courthouse erupted in chants of justice for Malcolm and murderer. Supporters held signs, some weeping openly, others trembling with rage. Yet, despite the intensity of the backlash, there remained an unshakable sense that justice was incomplete. For many, Malcolm's story wasn't solely about the moment his life was taken. It was about the years of quiet suffocation that led up to it, the relentless erosion of his opportunities, and the isolation he endured while surrounded by those he believed to be friends. That truth was underscored in a newly uncovered voicemail played on a primetime news special. Malcolm's voice, low and strained, carried a weight that sent chills through anyone listening. "Felicia, if anything happens to me, just know it wasn't an accident. I love you for always believing in me. Please don't let them erase me." Hearing that message was like being handed a key to his deepest fears that had now been proven all too real. Then came yet another twist. A sealed testimony from an unnamed witness was leaked to the press. This witness claimed they had seen Malcolm in a heated argument with both Tempest and an unidentified third conspirator only hours before his death. They described Malcolm's voice as trembling with rage as he accused this third person of selling me out for money and fame. While the witness's account was detailed, the name was still withheld from public view, leaving fans to wrestle with both hope and dread. Hope that justice might one day be complete, and dread that the person responsible was still walking free. The speculation reached a fever pitch, with countless names tossed around online, some baseless, others chillingly plausible. For fans, the damage was irreparable. The nostalgia they once felt for The Cosby Show was shattered beyond repair. Every rerun now played like a reenactment of a crime scene, the laughter track mocking the reality behind the scenes. What had once been a symbol of family, unity, and joy now felt like a lie wrapped in glossy sitcom packaging. For Malcolm's family, the pain was beyond words. In a rare and heartbreaking statement, his mother said, "They didn't just take my son's life. They took away the man he could have been, and they smiled while doing it." Those words cut deeper than any headline. A reminder that behind the public outrage was a family living with an irreplaceable loss every single day. As the trial against Tempest drew closer, rumors swirled that prosecutors were intentionally withholding the third conspirator's identity for a dramatic reveal in court, a moment they believed could shift the entire case. Legal analysts speculated it might be one of the most explosive moments in the history of celebrity trials, the kind that would be dissected in law schools and media circles for decades to come. In the meantime, the world waited, restless and angry, for the next piece of the puzzle to fall into place. They waited for the final name, the final truth, the final blow to a decades-old facade. The weight of that anticipation was almost unbearable, each day without resolution adding to the tension. And in that silence, one truth became painfully clear: Malcolm's death had never been a random tragedy. It was the ultimate betrayal, a carefully orchestrated act carried out by those who should have been his protectors. Somewhere out there, the third conspirator was still living freely, smiling for cameras, shaking hands, perhaps even giving interviews, while Malcolm's voice had been silenced forever. That silence, however, had sparked something that could not be extinguished, a fire in the hearts of millions determined to see justice served. People from all walks of life, whether they had grown up watching him or had only recently discovered his work, felt a personal connection to his story. Because in the end, it wasn't just about an actor. It was about trust betrayed, loyalty weaponized, and the devastating truth that sometimes the people smiling in the photographs are the ones holding the knife. When the third name is finally revealed, it will not just rock Hollywood, it will burn it to the ground, tearing away the last illusions of innocence surrounding an entire generation's beloved icons. And until that day comes, one chant will continue to echo across court steps, candlelight vigils, and social media timelines. Justice for Malcolm, always.